Hello. How are y'all? Good. My name is Klaehn. I'm the director of the Writing Center at WT. Writing Center is very encouraged with a lot of different departments here at WT. So we get to see all of the good stuff that happens with ChatGPT generated writing. I'm holding in my hand two of my favorite tools in the Writing Center. Notice I don't have to charge them or plug them in. We like to use them a lot when we sit down and start brainstorming and asking questions of students. And oftentimes I'll hand students a piece of paper and I'll say, can you write down exactly what you're trying to argue? Especially if they bring in a paper that is a little suspect as to did they generate that or not. What we're starting to notice more and more is that students don't know what they've written down or what they're trying to say in their papers. For example, we'll read through a paper and say, so what word were you going for here? And they're like, I don't know. Like, why did you use this word? And they're like, because I thought it was cool. And I'm like, what does this mean? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, great. You didn't write your paper. So we're running into a lot of those issues. We're starting to see a lot of those issues. I recently dealt with a student who had a paper flagged for AI. Swore up and down that the student did not write the paper using ChatGPT, like the student actually wrote the paper, according to the student. So I did this little trick, all right? I don't know if I'm giving away trade secrets, so if you're a student and you're going to try this, don't. I'm just kidding. Because remember, you don't want to waste water. I've only taken like 2 drinks of my water bottle this whole time, and I think I'm operating pretty well off of it, so I'm not going to waste my resources. But I took a paragraph from the paper that was flagged for AI. And I opened Grammarly, which is also AI, so it's really kind of fun, right? Thank you to the A&M system for sponsoring Grammarly and the Writing Center for one computer, so that worked out really well. But I pulled this particular paragraph and I dropped it over in Grammarly, which started flagging these sentences that said, this is probably AI. Grammarly leaves an out. This is probably, this has the pattern of AI. This could be AI. I think this is also a good moment to remind everybody that AI was trained by humans. So some of those sentence patterns are going to be similar, right? So anyway, so it pulls this paragraph, this is AI, this could potentially be AI. I said, all right, so I'm gonna try a trick. A particular sentence had a semicolon to separate 2 independent clauses. All right, so independent clause, semicolon, independent clause. I'm going to try something. Get my hands dirty here. I deleted the semicolon and put in a comma, but I did not add a conjunction, which means it's now a run-on sentence. So I backed out, and I waited for the little line that said this could potentially be AI. I waited for it to do its thing, right? You'll be shocked. You won't be shocked. It all of a sudden went, oh yeah, that's not AI. I pulled a semicolon and put a comma and made a run-on sentence. Then, because I was having fun at this point, I went to the grammar portion and I said, okay, let's run a grammar check on this paragraph. You'll be shocked at this part. It underlined the comma and said you have a comma splice. And I'm like, no, really? What should I do? And it said, put a semicolon. I said, okay. So I put the semicolon, went back to the AI detection. Yeah. Oh, this is AI. The problem is, and I appreciate you saying that we do have to have the human checker on this, right? The problem is AI is checking AI, and it's combating itself. So you need somebody to step in and referee this as the human aspect of, wait a minute, are you really doing this or not doing this? I did another sentence where I added a thus after the comma before a dependent clause. I'm making up a sentence to protect the guilty, but it's something like, I went to the store, comma, depending on the weather. Oh, well, this is AI. Okay, I went to the store, comma, thus, depending on the weather. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that's good. That's a good sentence. Good job. So I can manipulate very easily any piece of AI writing to make it human by messing with punctuation and conjunctions. That's what I learned kind of looking at these papers. So what do we do about this? If you're grading or using AI detection to grade, don't just trust the numbers. Before AI attacked us in the last couple of years, we used to have this thing called Turnitin that would check for plagiarism, right? It was kind of cool. We still have that, by the way. That was sarcasm. It's AI now too. But it would check for plagiarism, and so I would get requests from faculty, hey, my student has 60% plagiarized paper. Can you look at this? Sure. And I would look at it, and I would say, well, that's because your student has a 5-page paper with 10 block quotes and a works cited page. Oh, okay. I'm like, well, see, this is the problem, right? We're just trusting what the numbers tell us and not actually reading the paper. So maybe that's on the adults in the room to actually go and read the papers and stuff, right? The other thing that I'm noticing a lot of is this, and you had hinted towards this as well in your discussion, this lack of critical thinking. MIT, and Google this, don't go to chat and ask it, but Google MIT cognitive decline AI. They ran a little experiment. They did 3 different test groups. One group used ChatGPT solely to write their papers. Another group used Google and online search engines to write their papers, to do research and write their papers, to consume the research and type the paper. And another group did what I call the old-fashioned way. Give me some note cards, some books, and some pen and paper. Of those 3 groups, which one do you think was most successful in defending what they had written? Group 3. Yeah, I was kind of hinting towards that, right? Group 3, right? They retained the information. They made a connection with the information. They understood the information. They could explain the information. They could defend if questioned. Group 1 not only failed their defense, but physically, their minds were just degrading because they weren't engaged in thinking. Another way to put this, gardening. Anybody garden? No? Oh, you do? Yeah, gardening's difficult, yeah? Because you gotta like get your hands dirty, literally. Go out and dig up some dirt, put in some seeds, and hope for the best, right? How many of you buy your vegetables from the store? Now, here's the shocker. Here's the connection. Most students that are relying strictly on AI don't understand those vegetables grew up in a garden. They think those vegetables were just produced in the back of the store. How crazy is that, right? If I'm going to produce a paper, if I'm going to produce an argument, or I'm going to produce something, I want to get my hands dirty. I want to be in the soil. I want to be planting the seeds. I want to be figuring out what it is exactly I need to stand and argue. Can AI help me with some of this? Sure. I need an outline. Okay, here's an outline. I need you to help me rephrase this. Okay, sure, we can help you rephrase that. But what students are doing is they're just dumping all of their trust into the system to build something for them, and then they're trying to pass it off as their own. Nursing department, I've said this in multiple of my presentations, I don't want people stabbing me with a needle who have never stabbed somebody with a needle before, right? Oh, I'm not feeling well. We have to do surgery. Cool. Have you ever done surgery? That's going to be my next question, right? It's not going to be, oh, is a robot going to? That's awesome. I know robots can do it, don't get me wrong, but there's still humans involved, which could go either way. But besides that, I want somebody who has an experience with the topic or with the action. I don't want to put all of my trust into the AI, right? I teach technical writing, and there was a comment made by somebody, I won't name names, colleague, who said, wow, with all this AI, technical writing is just going to kind of like go away. And I said, that's awesome, but it's not going to go away because somebody still needs to be responsible for those manuals, right? Trial and error. And so my students yesterday in my Tech Com class, we're doing a requirements document, which you have to come up with a set of criteria, and then you have to basically have products that would meet that criteria, and then you have to choose the best product. So I fed ChatGPT, I'm sorry, I'll put the water back in the system. I fed ChatGPT my assignment sheet, and I said, produce a requirements document for me. And it went, all right. And ChatGPT just spit out some ridiculous stuff. But it was pages of just bullet points. And I asked my students, I said, do you guys trust what this is saying? And one of my students looked up the policy that ChatGPT was quoting. I asked it about a swing set, to give you context. One of my students looked up the policy and the law that ChatGPT was quoting for the requirements of a swing set. That law didn't exist. It sounded nice in the bullet, but it doesn't exist. So see, my students are producing these requirements documents for an actual client in our community. Imagine using ChatGPT and handing over that requirements document for that client. The client goes to get permits for a playground and cites these laws that don't exist. That's scary. I also had my students watch in real time ChatGPT produce an application letter to join my class. I said, I want you to write, ask ChatGPT, write an application letter based off of this criteria for joining my technical writing class. It did. It produced a letter, formatted and everything. Here's the best part. It made up a name, Alex Martinez. Then it did a whole paragraph about being a first-generation college student. And then it did a whole paragraph about being bilingual. And then it did a whole paragraph just making up all kinds of crazy stuff. But then it contradicted itself, because in paragraph 3, it's like, these are projects that I've already completed in college after you already told me that you're just now taking a class in college. So 5 paragraphs into this application letter, ChatGPT was lying. My students are like, why did it turn this candidate into a bilingual person? And I said, why do you think? And they're like, why did it make up the name Alex Martinez? And I'm like, why do you think? It goes back to the data bias, right? I asked ChatGPT one time to write me a soliloquy. And it did. Completely plagiarized from Hamlet. To be or not to be. And I said, hey, you plagiarized that. And ChatGPT said, no, I didn't. I was inspired. It's different. Plagiarized, inspired, 2 different things. I know that it's not going to slow down anytime soon, right? I had students yesterday in class, in real time. Mr. Klaehn, have you seen the damage in Jamaica? And I said, wow, already, huh? They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, they already have pictures coming out of Jamaica? They're like, yeah. While the hurricane is actively hitting Jamaica, they have still pictures of houses underwater. And I'm like, come on. A little bit of critical thinking, common sense. I said, pull up the radar. Where's the hurricane? Literally right on top of Jamaica, 180-mile-an-hour winds or whatever. And I'm like, so what's the difference in what you're telling me and what you see in that picture? Oh. Right? These things exist. Because I've broken my algorithms on social media, sometimes I get wrestling videos, like professional wrestling videos. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to see professional wrestling videos of Mr. Rogers calling out Betty White in the middle of a wrestling ring. And I'm like, what is going on? But they're so realistic looking. And our students, especially our students now, are going to struggle unless we start teaching them the difference in what's real and what's AI produced. I'm gonna stop there for my stuff, because we could talk all day. I'll let y'all ask me questions in a minute, but I'm gonna stop there.
But I think at this time, I would invite the speakers to come here. If you have any question, we just have 5 minutes. And I want to make sure that you have the chance to ask your question. This is the best opportunity, and I'm glad that these gentlemen, they work at WT.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all so much again for y'all's time. My question comes down to about the ethics of AI and kind of looking into that. So there was a recent study that the HuffPost did, and basically certain AI models, I guess, would preserve themselves, almost like a sentient being would do. And, this is to avoid shutdown or to avoid, being turned off. And I wonder, at what point does companies need to think ethically and be like, is this wrong, and how do we combat that, right? And what does that mean on a larger scale, affecting the economy and just the world as a whole?
I'll let you take it first.
About the ethics, as I've already told, the line is already blurring. The research is now going on that we found that, for example, there was a research carried out where almost 1/3 of the students, of course, in an anonymous feedback survey, they agreed that they used to write the LLM completely for the whole paper. And even in research publications, things are coming up where people, and again, the tools to detect, as Dr. mentioned about the AI tools like Turnitin, they are also AI. And the best part is students have learned to humanize this in the prompt, and now the AI is learning to humanize it. So again, that's why I said it's a societal, you can say, thing to think about this, because for them, for the companies, it's about winning this race, whoever wins the race. And even if they have to cross the lines, they will. And we already see that sometimes they just change the wordings, but they are plagiarizing. So we cannot stop it. We can handle it in a different way. Maybe instead of asking students or the researchers not to use AI at all, because we know they're going to use it, let's use it in a regulatory way. Maybe some of the journals, for example, allowed that you can cite a ChatGPT or LLM, so that still the things are ethically under control. Because if you don't, if you stop a child from doing something, they will do it secretly. Allow them, but in a controlled manner, so that you are watching and you are aware of it. So that's how I think this should be handled.
And also on that note, when we talk about ethics, right? I always ask my students, like, why are you here? Like, why are you at WT? What do you hope to achieve from this? And then they'll give me this really good answer, and then I'll say, great, do you want to just hand that to the robots? Because that's what you're doing, right? What purpose do you serve if AI can then do what your purpose is? I think to your question about like creating likenesses and those types of things, I think Hollywood's messing with that right now. They're running into some issues. Some actors have signed over their likenesses, and other actors are like, don't even think about it. So they're kind of navigating those ethical waters. But for me, if I have a student and I'm working with that student, I want that student to learn and to be able to go out and produce. At some point, that student's going to be found out. So if you're using AI to write your paper, you're using AI to write your resume, you're using AI to create your cover letters and all of your skill sets, at some point you actually have to do the job. And that's whenever it's going to fall apart. And these companies that are taking these gambles and trying to hire these people, that hurts their bottom line at some point, right? The productivity. So that for me is like, it'll come out in the end at some point. It's not, I'm going to do my best to make sure my students can actually go out and plant a garden.
So with more and more entry-level jobs being kind of phased out since AI has kind of come onto the scene, like as a new grad, how do you recommend we combat that?
So AI is still very far from replacing your job completely. It is giving us indications that it might replace, and that's where our decisions should be based on. If we are doing the same mundane task of writing the same code for a technical, for example, position, then we need to change that a little bit. Again, as I've told, it is difficult to ignore AI. You have to learn with it. Rather than letting it do your work, ask it to assist you. That's one of the way of handling it. And secondly, specialized jobs are still in the market, because it is indicating us, please don't learn only this skill, learn something else as well. So there are many skills that requires human intervention and so on. And that's why I think still we are far from that position. But we should be developing those skills still at the point where AI cannot handle those skills. And again, decision making and all those sort of stuff. For example, if you're being hired at a position where you need to scan the resumes, don't let AI do that for you. Do it by yourself. And it cannot take up those things. It can only do the things that people have done in past. So maybe come up with new ways of doing things, and that's how you can be sure that you will get a job and that will not be taken away by an AI.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's your degree?
Marketing.
And what do you think about that degree? Like, why did you get into marketing, I guess would be my question.
Well, it's a business degree that has transferable skills.
Okay, like what?
I mean, with marketing, you can go into sales.
Okay.
You can work for a marketing agency. You can even go the business route and, do something that's not necessarily marketing related. There's a lot of options.
And how much of that requires you to be able to have interaction with other people?
I would say pretty decent amount.
So if I'm going to buy something, I would rather talk to you than to the robot. That's your leg up. So AI is going to be great, it's going to help, whatever, but you still have to be you. That's why you get that degree.
One last comment, because we are running out of time. One piece of data I just looked at, research and development. Billions of dollars are being spent, especially by the Magnificent Seven, which I mention all the names of the companies. And so this is where a lot of money is being spent, and some of the money may not be what we call return on assets, investment. It may be wasted, but some money will be useful. One last question.
Yes. Do you think ChatGPT is going to slow it down or bring it back to where people actually start buying stuff in person? And like you said with her, the more of I want to talk to a person instead of online. Because like with our generation, we're all about that online shopping, best deal. I went to a mall in like Fort Worth and it was just dead silent. I was like, cool, all this cool stuff for me.
Right. There are the positives and negatives of that. I ordered something from Amazon last week. Amazon canceled it without telling us that they canceled it. So I was waiting on my jukebox to get here with the CD player, by the way. And I found out that it didn't. And so I went and started looking at actual stores to try to find something similar, and it didn't exist. So I had to order it on Amazon. They had the market on this jukebox that I really had my eyes on for the Writing Center, y'all. But yeah, I think that you're starting to see a little bit of a swing where people actually want to have that human interaction and they want to have that discussion. If I could speak to this in my tech comm class, all the students have their computers open, but what I'm noticing is they're actually writing down notes on notepads and checking the computer to do a correlation with it. And I said, why are you writing it on, I'm curious, this isn't weird, right? Why are you writing that on a notepad? Like, because it helps me remember it better and makes me pay attention to you, and I'm writing down your words and we're having this conversation. So I think students, especially in these generations, are starting to yearn for that personal interaction more so. I think we're going to swing back or find a good hybrid.
Okay, very good. Well, as always, thanks so much. And thank you also for coming here. Appreciate that.